Shortly after, we see the prince alone, deep in thought about creating a giant tank to hold Redwater River water. He plans to use steam engines to transport the water into the tanks. Once every household has water, he can easily set up bathrooms and toilets. He's feeling pretty pleased with himself about the idea. He stretches his back after a long stretch of work and finds himself missing Nightingale's presence. He decides to call her, but he gets no response from her. A mischievous glint flickers in his eyes as he considers doing something unthinkable. Yep, you guessed it right. He is planning to munch on the snacks Nightingale has stashed in her drawer. But before he can act on his thought, the lady herself appears and firmly warns him not to lay a finger on her dried fish. Prince then asks her why she's feeling a bit let down lately, and she responds that she was just following his earlier directive not to bother him. The prince apologizes, admitting he's been busy lately, and he's grateful she's always there to watch over him. He opens the drawer again, revealing a specially crafted gun. He explains he wanted to give it to her earlier, but it took longer than expected to carve the patterns on this beauty. This revolver is completely different and far superior to anything they've made before. Nightingale eagerly takes it. She's momentarily speechless, stammering out a thanks, then happily requests if he can teach her how to use the revolver. Once they step outside, Nightingale immediately starts her shooting practice. Surprisingly, she hits the target dead on with her first try, which is impressive considering poor Knight Carter hadn't hit a single bullseye after days of training. She asks if she did better, and the prince nods approvingly, mentioning she'll move on to a training simulation next. Nightingale is clueless about what's next, so our hero explains that hanging over the targets are stones of divine judgment, and she needs to take them down in the shortest time possible while she is exposed to their effects. After understanding her task, she prepares herself. Just before she dives in, the prince stops her and tells her to pull the trigger, adding with a grin, "Remember to shout, it's high noon." Cheekily, she turns around and asks if it's a suggestion or an order. Nevertheless, she gets ready. Memories of past heroics flood her mind when Wendy had told her that she's already by the prince's side. With a deep breath, she begins striking those divine stones of judgment, hitting each one with precision, reminding herself that she's his shield and will always stand by his side. The big day finally arrives, and the entire town gathers to watch the play they've been training for. The best part? Well, it's free for everyone. The prince has even invited the merchant lady Margaret. Among the crowd is another merchant, Hogg, who finds the food delicious and otherworldly. Meanwhile, Fjord's merchant Marlon is super impressed by the quality and material of the cups, and he's ready to buy a few for himself. As the merchants continue their business talk, Lady Margaret apologizes on their behalf. She says that merchants are just laymen who can't stop talking about money and is sorry they're taking up his time. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Lightning is having a blast munching on popcorn, while Maggie looks annoyed that she's hogging it all for herself. Down on the ground, the prince is surprised that Lightning didn't recognize Margaret, even though she's been like a mother figure to her. Margaret explains they parted ways when she was very young, so it's no wonder she doesn't remember, and she only wants to reconnect back with her naturally. Margaret then asks about this snack called popcorn, and wonders if it's also a royal family snack. Our hero nods yes, but in reality, he's had Nana's help in making these popcorns from Sister Leaf's special corn. He can't imagine watching a show without munching on them. Well, Margaret isn't fully convinced yet, because she has lived in the king's city before. Without being rude, she asks him to hold off on flattering her, and then asks about his closest friend in the city. It turns out Prince Roland didn't have one, as he was just a flirtatious guy, and his closest companion was his magical hand, Yorko, which he used to grope every woman around the castle. Margaret starts chuckling and points out that she's also heard he used to be quite the ladies' man in the castle. Poor Roland feels a bit embarrassed that he let slip something awkward to her. He then changes the topic and urges everyone to focus on the play, and thus begins the story of Girl Cinderella, with Lady Irene, wife of Ferlin Eltec, playing the role of Cinderella. Another standout in the cast is May, known as the Star of the West, who looks stunning on stage. It doesn't take Margaret long to realize who she is, and she's totally amazed to see her there. Prince Roland tells her to watch quietly, but Margaret is so excited she can't help but sing May's praises loudly. It seems our hero hadn't anticipated Lady Irene would bring such a renowned friend to perform here in the border town. As the show continues, May's acting looks incredibly realistic. When she pushes Cinderella to the ground, the shove is so lifelike and powerful that everyone in the crowd becomes genuinely concerned. Even Prince Roland feels like that push was personal. As the play continues once again, the whole crowd is totally hooked, and even Lady Irene can't help but notice how her friend has everyone's attention. During the break, someone in the audience comments that the performance was so realistic they got a bit scared, encouraging Lady Irene to keep up the great work. She agrees enthusiastically, and this time Irene is determined to win everyone over with her own skills. When the play resumes, Lightning also has a little role of her own, playing a cute witch. Let's skip the play details, but by the end of this scene, it's Sister Irene who steals the show. May, usually flawless in her acting, finds herself overshadowed this time by Irene's outstanding performance. Well, it looks like seeing her friend win has made her even sadder. This guy Ferlin has been the target of countless women in Longsong Fortress, and in the end, he chose Irene. Now she can't help but cry her eyes out over this love triangle drama. As she walks off the stage, she notices Knight Carter holding a bouquet of flowers. He introduces himself as Chief Knight Carter Lannis, the Prince's Knight, and he gives her props for her incredible performance. Not one to waste time, he immediately invites her for a drink, leaving her blushing and feeling quite happy inside. The scene shifts to Longsong Fortress, where the soldiers from Grey Castle have arrived. Upon seeing their familiar flag fluttering, the ambassador starts to lose his cool. Below, the knight introduces himself as Lehman Hawes, King Timothy's messenger, and he has brought a message from the King's City. He requests to lower the drawbridge to allow them entry. One of the knights quickly brings the permit, and the ambassador quickly takes a look at it, only to find out that this is indeed stamped with Timothy's emblem. Petrov quickly realizes that he can't turn down the new king's messenger like that, or he will be picking up a needless fight with the King's City of Grey Castle. With that in mind, he tells his soldier to grab 3 quick horses and make a dash for Border Town, and deliver the message to Roland that Timothy's crew is on the doorstep. Imagine if they had something like Skype to communicate. It would be quite a sight to see all the kings and princes having a heated conference call, probably more toxic than a Call of Duty lobby. Once the soldier dashes off, Petrov hopes Prince Roland gets the news soon. With the enemy's messenger group numbering less than 50, they don't pose much of a threat. All Petrov can do now is let them inside, and as the gate lowers, those knights below exude an ominous energy, and I'm pretty sure that shit is about to get real. Meanwhile, back in Border Town, it seems Prince Roland has finally brought the first bathtub into this world. Everyone bombards him with questions, and he patiently explains everything. When the tap is turned, water flows out, leaving everyone amazed and curious. They are curious to know if they can drink it, and from where it is coming. Prince Roland explains it's not safe to drink directly without boiling first, and Anna then elaborates on the principle of a siphon, showing how they can transfer water using this basic method. They've positioned a tank of this water at a higher elevation to ensure it reaches everyone's homes effectively. As Prince Roland gets caught up teaching everyone the nerdy ins and outs, our not-so-sophisticated lady just couldn't resist poking at the tap to see what would happen. As you can imagine, water starts gushing out like rain from the steel pipe above. Prince Roland quickly steps in to give a quick rundown on how the showerhead works. Meanwhile, Sister Lily jumps in with a bit of sass, asking if the prince spent his whole week at the castle just to make his bathing more comfy. She's not shy about pointing out how nobles love their comforts, and he seems no different. Lady Scroll shuts Lily down with a quick, shush. But Prince Roland stays cool, explaining that chasing comfort drives human progress, and he's no stranger to that. Despite his casual yet clever response, Lily just sneers and turns her head away. Later on, when the prince is alone, Lady Scroll swings by to apologize for Lily's antics, but our boy just shrugs it off, saying it's no big deal. Well, since we haven't heard much about Sister Lily until now, Lady Scroll decides to reveal how she's been deceived many times and now finds it hard to trust others. Lady Scroll starts off telling us how she sniffed out Sister Lily using her magic power sensing abilities, right in one of the shelters in Redwater City. Basically, in the past, Lady Scroll would travel through towns pretending to be the wife of a noble interested in adopting a child, all the while carefully observing to find awakened sisters like Lily. However, when she tried to adopt Lily, she was refused by the shelter owner, who insisted on waiting until the children reached adulthood before they could be adopted. This refusal raised red flags, prompting Nightingale to dig into the orphanage's finances. Turns out, over the past decade, 3 witches were handed off to the church. The good-looking ones got dolled up and sold to nobles, while the others were left to die in the forest behind the shelter. When they grilled the shelter owner, it turns out he wasn't running the shelter for the cash. He got a sick thrill from controlling and even killing the girls. That is when their leader, Kara, understandably furious, took justice into her own hands and killed that man. When they tried to invite the girls into the association, many of them looked at the association members with hatred. It was as if they were feeling robbed of a chance to be adopted by nobles. Lily was no different until Kara showed the bodies of their friends who were supposed to have been adopted, now dead in the woods behind the shelter. The sight was so overwhelming that Lily vomited and passed out in Wendy's arms. When she woke up, she seemed emotionally numb, like a doll. Under Wendy's nurturing care, Lily gradually recovered, but her experience left her with a deep-seated resentment towards nobles, which might explain her sometimes harsh behavior towards our hero. The prince starts feeling sorry for Lily, realizing she still manages to smile despite everything she's been through.